Well, welcome back. So, the other day, Ellen and I were texting about spring thunderstorms and how they can totally freak kids out, particularly if they pop up in the middle of the night. And since it's spring storm season and they've already started for Ellen, they haven't quite reached us here in Virginia, but we thought it would be a good time to chat about thunderstorms and children having fears around them and language to use. So, Ellen, fill me in on that recent scenario you had with Dom.
Yeah, so this one was one of those in the middle of the night. And growing up, I felt like I always kind of had storm anxiety. Like I was always anxious about what was going on. So after our conversation, I kind of like was reflecting more on what that looks like. My dad was always very good at tracking the storms. And I think
Mm.
like subconsciously that actually led me to be a little more anxious like when they were coming because I like saw how much attention to detail he was putting into like every second of the storm that I was like, if he's this focused about it, like there's got to be something wrong, you
Yeah.
know?
I'm so curious. Hold on. Why was he tracking them? Is he just interested in weather? What's up with that?
I think for our safety, like
Oh,
for
oh,
like if it
wow.
was coming to hit us, yeah. So I think it was, do we need to go to the like safe spot in the basement? Do we need, what all do we need to do? He was just always very good at staying on top of it, and I think it was like he's the one that's in charge of making sure we're safe.
Yep. Okay.
I don't know. I haven't asked him. It would be interesting. Maybe he does just really love storms. I don't know. But now I feel like I've kind of taken that upon me. So I was up basically all night that storm was coming through. It was like a couple hour where it could have hit at any time sort of situation. So I was up like constantly checking, constantly tracking, just like he was. And then Dom woke up to some thunder, which is, it was really loud thunder. It was lightning. It was a big storm, but we ended up not like going to the basement or doing anything like that. But he woke up and he was like, "What was that sound?" Just like very panicked, very anxious. And I knew it was like the start of the storm, so it wasn't going away anytime soon. So I was like, all right, I got to go talk to him, talk him
Mm-hmm.
down, help
Mm-hmm.
him understand it's okay. And in that conversation with him, I tried to be really specific on what words I used to help him not feel anxious about storms because he did ask, he's like, "Can I just come in your bed?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "We're not doing this every time it storms. Like it storms a lot here. Like we can't." And I didn't say that to him, but in my head, I'm running through that
Right,
process. Like
right.
what words can I use to let him know that that is not necessary? So I worked really hard to not say scared or like this is something that even saying like you don't need to be scared about this. Like I just tried to keep that out of it and really tried to focus on like that there is thunder, it's storming and it can be loud, and he was seeing the lightning, like lightning comes before the thunder, so I didn't want to tell him anything that wasn't factual, that wasn't true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then to also let him know like mom and dad are like keeping track of it, and we'll let you know, we'll keep you safe. Right now everything is safe and good and we can sleep, and you'll hear thunder and you can just roll back over and know, oh, it's a storm and mom and dad have got it under control. So that was kind of how I left that conversation. But then I don't know, it's just interesting. I think had I even said like, "Oh yeah, the storm can be scary,"
Oh,
like that
totally.
could have taken a totally different turn. And so I'm, yeah, curious to
Yeah.
hear how storms go for you guys.
Well, what I love is that you managed your own anxiety and didn't project it on to him. So, this often, you're making me think of all the parents I've worked with who have children who are struggling with a fear of the dark, which is a totally normal thing that happens in childhood, that idea comes about. But those parents will often say to me, "Well, I was scared of the dark as a child." And so they have all this angst for their child, even though rationally we know we don't need to panic about it. And so listening to you, I'm thinking, oh, wow, you have all this angst because of your childhood around storms. But you sounds like you did a really good job of not projecting that onto him and being thoughtful about your words. And so my general advice to parents when this comes up is to take the opportunity when a daytime storm comes through to talk a little bit more about it. So everything you did sounds great. You talked about the storm a little bit, just the truth of what it is. And I can't even remember the info I found. I did some research when this came up with Addison. I don't think Ainsley really dealt with this too much, but Addison had a period where she was anxious about storms. And I did some research. I think I found some YouTube videos that were age appropriate on kind of the science of a storm, basic for a child to understand what it is. So I showed her what it is, and I talked about, Mother Nature works this way, and this is just one of the things. And then when there were daytime storms, I would say, I really like daytime storms. It's a little bit how I tell kids I like the dark. And I encourage parents to say, like, you love to sleep in the dark. And so I'll say, I actually really like listening to daytime storms. I think or thunderstorms. I think it's kind of relaxing and cool to listen to. So when there was a daytime storm, I would say, let's lay on the floor and just listen to the storm. And so I would typically like go up into her room. She was in the crib for such a long time that when this came up, she was still in the crib. So I'd lay on the floor in her room with her and we'd hold hands and I'd say, oh, that was a good one. Wow. Oh, yeah, the lightning flash. Oh, and then the thunder. When they're close together, that means the storm is right nearby or kind of right coming over us. Then it's going to start to spread apart. And so just talking about it, but in a way where I was kind of curious about it and that I kind of found it relaxing. And then during the nights, we only had one storm actually here. Different than the Midwest. I don't know if what your dad worried about was like tornadoes. We don't have as much of that here. I know growing up in the Midwest, we had a lot of those
lots of tornadoes. Yeah.
Must go to the basement. We had one where I got my kids up in the middle of the night and went to the basement because I could hear the sirens going and I was like, what? I've never even heard those here. They don't remember that. I don't think. They were probably maybe like 3 and 4 when we went down to the basement. But even then, I was like, well, I got an alert that, for this storm, we're supposed to be in the basement until it passes. I didn't give a lot of detail on it. I just said, we're going to take a little nap down here on the couch and then we'll go back to bed. And so when storms then would go through after we had talked about it, I didn't really have too many issues, I don't think, with them waking me up. But I would say in the morning, and I still do sometimes, the kids like, oh my gosh, did you hear that thunderstorm last night? And they might say no, because also kids will sleep through an insane amount. And I would say, oh my gosh, I heard it. It woke me up. And then it was like so relaxing to just listen to the thunderstorm. So I just put a very positive spin on it. And then sometimes they'll say like, yeah, it woke me up and I was listening to it for a while. And so I think you did a great job. And the only thing you might add to it is during a daytime storm, taking another opportunity to talk about it and to lay down on the floor and listen to it and explain how it works.
I love that you did that in their room. So like the next day or something.
Yes.
I mean, it's Midwest constant storms, I feel like, and tornado warnings and everything. But like the next day it was storming right after their nap. And so I was like, this is awesome. I love to sit in the sunroom and watch the rain. Mm-hmm. But I think it would be really interesting to do that again in his room or in Josie's room specifically. So then it's like, this is what it sounds like in the room that like you have a lot of questions about, right? Like, because when we're all up and looking at it outside, it's easier to be like, oh yeah, this is fine. My mom's right here. But like, let's go to the space that you felt worried in previously. I like that idea of like laying in his room specifically to do that.
Totally. And if you have, an upstairs versus a downstairs, what thunder sounds like up in a bedroom could be very different than what it sounds like downstairs. Mm-hmm. And so to have kids hear and see kind of through the window what it's like in their room is important. And then the one thing I would say, and it sounds like you didn't do this, but I wouldn't tell kids that a storm might happen tonight. We don't need to give them that nervous anticipation because, like you said, the reality is you've got this. You and your husband are making decisions for what's best for your family, and we don't need them worrying about it. And so if there were a time where you're like, hey, we got to wake them up and we got to move to the basement, then you'll just do that. And you'll just wake them up and move them. But I would not say there's going to be a storm tonight. If they wake up and they hear the storm and they call for you, you can say, yep, it's a thunderstorm. We get a lot of those here where we live. So now you can lay down and listen to the storm, and it'll just get easier and easier for him to navigate that.
That's great advice. And curious to hear, I know we're probably close to getting into the podcast, but fireworks is another one. And maybe we need to talk another time about it because fireworks was a big one that came up. Forget what recently would have happened. I guess New Year's Eve that came up, and he's like, what's happening? What are those? And we're like, it happens again on the 4th of July. And now he's like, is it the 4th of July? Like, he's
Oh
very worried about
no.
the 4th of July coming up. He's recently stopped asking about it, but
Oh my gosh, we should do a whole episode on that for July. So let's plan on doing that in June.
okay, perfect.
All right. Thanks, Ellen. And you crushed it. That sounds like you did a perfect job navigating that. Okay, on to today's episode. Today's episode is for you if your child has developed the habit of calling you back in at bedtime, or even worse, in the middle of the night, just to have you retuck them in or fix their blanket. Maybe their blanket has fallen off, maybe they got out of bed and need help climbing back in, and suddenly it's like you're on call for the retuck all evening and all night long. I'm going to help you get off the tuck-in merry-go-round. Hi, I'm Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of 2. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. At first, your child may have needed an occasional extra tuck-in. No big deal, right? But then it became a nightly ritual after lights out. And maybe it's now happening during the night as well. Without meaning to, it's become part of your child's routine. So let's talk about how to break this pattern in a way that feels respectful, empowering, and effective. Because yes, even toddlers can learn to pull the blanket back on themselves. You do not have to be on the night shift duty every single night. Here's the approach I teach, and it works beautifully, even with kids as young as 2 years old. In fact, this is exactly what I did with Ainsley when she was 2, and within 3 days, the requests for me to come back in and fix her blanket completely stopped. The key? Teach the skill during the day, not right at bedtime or before the nap. You want to teach when emotions are low and brains are open to learning. And the best way to teach them this skill is through role playing. You're going to turn this into a fun little game, hopefully. Start by saying something like, okay, we're going to practice what to do if your blanket falls off during the night. Ready? Then have your child get into bed just like you do at bedtime. Tuck them in, tell them to pretend that they're asleep. And then next, you're going to gently move the blanket to wherever you usually find it when they call you back in. Maybe it's half on the floor. Maybe it's bunched up at the bottom of the bed. Wherever it usually ends up. And then say, okay, pretend you just woke up and you notice that your blanket is off. Now it's time for you to put it back on. So show me how you would do that. Encourage them to find the blanket and pull it back on all by themselves. And yes, you may need to show them once or physically kind of help them do that once, and then have them practice it on their own without you helping them reposition the blanket. A lot of kids will find this kind of pretend play really fun. But of course, some won't be so into it, and that's totally okay. If they refused, just role play for them. Say, okay, I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to pretend that I am you. And then you model being asleep, the blanket being off, waking up, pulling the blanket back on. You will show them what this looks like. The goal here isn't a perfect performance. It's exposure and repetition. You're planting the seed that they can do this on their own. And even if they refuse to practice, I promise you that they can do it. Once you've introduced the idea and attempted to have them practice it even just once, or you demonstrated it even just once, you're going to follow through with having them take care of their own blanket. But you also want to be clear that that is the plan. You want them to know what to expect if they call you back in. So you will tell them that you will only tuck them in once at bedtime. And then even if they call out, even if they throw a fit, even if they say, but I can't do it, you're going to offer calm encouragement from the doorway, ideally, and say something like, you've got this. You could pull the blanket back on. Look around for your blanket, pull it back on. And if they really are refusing to do it, you can say, it's okay. You can sleep without your blanket. You don't need to have your blanket. And here's the thing. You're not being cold or dismissive. You're actually showing confidence in your child. You're sending that message of, I believe in you. You can do this. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to empower them. You'll be amazed at how quickly kids figure this out when we stop doing it for them and start encouraging them to do it on their own. Time, space, and a little bit of encouragement and really sticking to it will go a very long way. So if you're stuck in the blanket tucking in loop, give this a try. A little practice during the day can lead to a way smoother bedtime and fewer interruptions at night. And if bedtime has become a full-blown battle, stalling power struggles, you needing to stay in the room, it's gone far beyond the blanket, then I want to encourage you to check out my program, Your Preschool Sleep Champion. It's designed specifically for kids ages 2.5 to 6 who are struggling at bedtime and or waking in the middle of the night or too early in the morning. Inside, I'll walk you through step by step how to shift the bedtime dynamic and help your child feel confident and secure about falling asleep independently and back to sleep if they wake up. You can find all the details at www.sleepandwellnesscoach.com/programs, or just click the link in the show notes. All right, that's it for today's episode. If this was helpful, don't forget to share it with a fellow parent who's ready to reclaim their evenings and their sleep. And as always, thanks for listening. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.